are broadcasting from the Rockhampton Beef Week in Rockhampton, Queensland, Australia. So it's been a very interesting day, to say the very least. Part of what we've been doing today is to get around and talk to people and let them know about things that are happening in terms of the security of farming and in particular the beef industry. We've talked about the complete shutdown of the red meat industry, and we've had a very mixed reaction. You get some people who don't want to look at that sort of stuff. They don't want to believe it. You get some people who are already halfway switched on. They're already across the information, but in many cases, they don't want to say anything because they don't want to stand out from the crowd. They don't want to take a position and become prominent. So this is one of the things that we're finding while we are up here, and the whole idea is to try and get many of the industry leaders to understand what we've got happening here in the beef industry. And we've spoken to a number of people who have a very strange way of looking at things. Many people who, try to tell us how excellent they are at business, how incredibly good they are at business, and that, a lot of people who do fail at business, well, it's because they're no good or not good operators. And when I try and talk to people about the global big picture from the likes of the World Economic Forum or the United Nations or, as we constantly talk about, the World Health Organization, a lot of these people don't want to believe what you're saying, and in fact will ridicule what you're saying. Some people, will ask for better information or further and better particulars, which is okay, but at the end of the day, when people, sometimes will get a very silly look on their face, a ridiculing look, but then when you ask them a few questions, like, do you know about the World Economic Forum? They say no. And, other people I'll ask them about the digital currency, for example. How do you think the digital currency will affect your business? And at that point, it becomes obvious that a lot of these people have got no idea in the world what you're even talking about. And then, so I ask people, how can you make a decision, or how can you give me some sort of reply to what I'm saying when you can't even tell me what the elements of the argument are all about? And in case we get a lot of people who become very arrogant and ridiculing over speaking about the likes of the World Economic Forum, and when they say, so who are these people? They're unelected. We can vote them. We can vote our politicians out. How can an unelected body have the power to make our decisions and make our legislations and make our rules and regulations? It becomes very, very simple. They are doing that because they have now influenced enormously the politicians, many of the politicians that we've got throughout the country, and to the degree where we see many of our politicians and many of the world leaders, in fact, who will attend the World Economic Forum annual conference there. So when I say that the World Economic Forum, the likes of Klaus Schwab, don't even bother to go and see the world leaders all go to see him. That in itself should be enough to give people the impression or the understanding that when these people tell us that they're going to wipe everybody out, when they're going to take all your money, all your property, that should be enough for people to understand and say, well, okay, if they've got for example, the President of the United States, the President of Russia, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Prime Minister of Australia, the leader of China, Xi Jinping, who attend their conference in Davos, then that should be enough to let everybody know that these people have got the clout to do what they're saying. And then we get down to, well, they want to be given evidence as to what these people are saying. So we only need to indicate, have a look at the book written by Klaus Schwab called The Great Reset, COVID-19, The Great Reset, and have a look at the things that they talk about in, for example, the 17 Sustainable Goals, the Agenda 21, the Agenda 2030, all the stuff that ends up being about the carbon neutral by 2050 or 2030. So, you know, they have an enormous amount of information about people not owning a car, not being able to leave their areas. We talk about 15-minute cities. And, you know, we get some people now who still argue the point, when in fact they've never, ever heard of those kind of things. And when you talk about, for example, Melbourne being a smart city, when you talk about all the cities in Europe, in England, where they now are blocking off streets with concrete barricades to make these areas that are specific to electric vehicles or so-called low-emission vehicles. You know, this stuff is very real. It is happening, and it's happening right now. So we have got around and spoken to some of the industry representatives, if you like. We've spoken to some of the stock and station agents. We've talked to some of the Australian government departments, some of the Queensland government departments, and it is becoming very, very scary once you actually get these people all in one spot. And I suggest to everybody, if you're here at Beef Week, go and visit these government agencies and these so-called industry leaders and check out their material, because what they constantly talk about is climate change and the structure and requirements for our farmers to meet certain targets that refer back to carbon. And well, they might say you know, can voluntarily follow some sort of a carbon target, voluntarily start to measure your outputs, voluntarily do this and that and the other thing. But what that's all about, and let's make no mistake, that is about creating the structure that people are going to be corralled into more and more, that people are going to be forced to get their mind around and accept, and that will then put them basically in the kill chute, and they can just continually tighten the screws and move the goalposts continuously to make it tighter and tighter and harder for people to comply with all these restrictions and requirements. So building this system is knocking out our farmers. Building this system is how they're going to do it. Building the system now is to get people's mindset around conforming to these ever tightening rules and regulations, to the point where you're just going to work out one day you're not viable. You can't do it. So some of the meetings that I've had today involve talking about a lot of this climate stuff and cattle and reducing emissions and methane, etc., from cattle. So my advice is to everybody, and the advice I gave to people today, the agricultural industry needs to say, we are no longer interested in reducing this or reducing that or reducing something else. Because at the end of the day, climate change is a lie, it's fraud. And what we're going to see is that the restrictions become so tight and so hard to deal with, you will simply lose. You will go broke because you can't do it. And that is the intention. That is their plan. That's what they're specifically doing. So I say to the agricultural sector as a whole, when they talk about coming up with all these plans, fitting into this framework, that framework, getting your ESG scores in order, getting your social credit scores in order, then What we need to tell them, the collective, whether it's the population, the government, the regulatory authorities, who cares? We need to say to them, hell no. You take your frameworks and your restrictions and your ever decreasing allowable tolerances, and you go and shove them, because we've got your number. We know what's happening. We know that this is a plan to destroy our farmers, and they need to be told, we're not doing this anymore. It is lies. It is fraud. And if we don't stand up and say this as an industry and as a whole, then this industry is finished. It is as simple as that. And just talking amongst different people in the game, different people in the industries from all different sorts of parts of the industry, there are a number of people who would agree with a lot of what I'm saying, but they're about, how do we do it? Farmers will not join together. Farmers will not stand together. Farmers are too busy working hard. They don't want to know about this sort of stuff. They don't care. Well, they better care. They better get with the program and understand very, very serious things are happening to them. And if they don't get with the program, they won't be in the program. It is that simple. So I'd just like to say towards the end of the broadcast here, that Beef Week here in Rockhampton, there are a huge number of politicians getting around the countryside here. We've bumped into quite a few of them, met quite a few of them, and most of them we have a pretty good run. Most of them will say good day, at least, shake hands with people, and we're not here at this point to rip it up politicians. We're here to act professionally and courteously. So that's what we're about. And at the end of the day, we've had quite a good reception from many of them here, not all from the major parties, but some. At the very least, act in a way that is respectful and in a way that is easygoing, or is, acts as a decent person. And I know many people hold politicians to a level where they say they don't do that. But there's one in particular that is starting to stand out that, how would you say, the people around him are not that flash. The people around him, let's just leave it at that for the time being. We'll say they're not that flash. So we've had a few events have happened today that are not that flash. And at the minute, there's a few things that I've put in place to try and fix a few things up. Not from our point of view, but from their point of view. So we might have some things that get fixed up, or we might not. And if we don't, then we will certainly use our platform to highlight the ridiculous, arrogant and really disgusting behaviour that we've seen. But we won't say too much more about it just at this point. We'll see if we get some sort of resolution tomorrow, and then we'll look at whether or not we go any further and we talk about that. So at the end of the day, we've got Wade Northhausen here. We are at Beef Week in Rockhampton in Queensland, Australia. We're doing a lot of what we said. We're starting to try and get into the movers and the influencers in the industry. We'll be talking with a lot more of these institutions and so on, and we'll bring you a much more detailed report tomorrow about where they stand and about whether they're pushing things that are going to see our beef industry wound up. And we'll also have a bit more of a discussion about people who might be multi-millionaires, might have a $10 million place, they might have $100 million, who think that they're doing just great. Because when we said to a few of these people, you're not going to have that for much longer. Some of them get a bit narky. Some of them get a little bit testy. And others want to know what you're talking about. So what we're doing, the tactics and strategies are having an impact. but I can tell you as an absolute fact, I'll close on this. It doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter who you think you are. If the government takes you to task and they use climate change as one of the reasons on behalf of the World Economic Forum and the UN and the WHO, you are toast. So some of the people that I've spoken to over the last few days have said you are in the sights to lose everything you have. That's very, very real. And once again, you look on the World Economic Forum websites, the WHO, they call agriculture a big problem in terms of the climate change. And my opinion is they think we are public enemy number one. This is how they're painting the picture. And yeah, I'm here to tell you, they're deadly serious. They've got the clout to do what they're going to do. And the only way we can save ourselves is if we get the masses on board, we get the numbers on board. And, we'll talk about a lot more that they're doing to the agricultural sector and the environment, how the government is in fact destroying the environment, and how many of the greenies help them to do it. Many of the greenies get on board and they don't do anything to stop what's happening with the environmental destruction. So once again, Wade Northhausen here for Billboard Battalion, Beef Week at Rockhampton. This is Wednesday, midweek, and we'll